Hi everyone, this is Vlad from Modulus Render, and in today's tutorial we're going to talk about this scene, and I'm going to walk you through the lighting, the materials that I used, and the final render settings. So let's take a look. Let's get started. Let me just move Thea out of the way. Now, in SketchUp we have this room with a circular background, a picture basically on the outside so we can see it through the windows. And it's basically a scene that was built to showcase this desk designed by one of my clients. And the idea was to have a very simple modern room with the desk in the center of the composition. But I wanted to make something special, so I built a pampas grass chandelier over the table. And let me just open up the layer so we can see it. Where is it? Right, I built this to have something extra in the scene to bring attention to this area over here. So I want to show you guys how I did the lighting, how I did the materials, and especially how I built this pampas grass chandelier. So let's start with the chandelier, with the grass. So I'm going to show you a simple way of how you can do this in SketchUp, and I'm going to walk you through each step that I made. I'm not going to do it in real time because it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of test renders, and this is not the tutorial for that. But basically I have this texture with an opacity mask, something like this, and I use this as a leaf that I scattered across different types and shapes of branches. So this is the main idea. I just draw these with lines and arches, give them a little bit of thickness, some texture, and then multiply those, arrange them, bend them if you need them to be bent, to have a different shape. Basically, you build a skeleton for the leaf to be spread across, right? And you get something like this. Now you can use this Make Fur plugin from SketchUp. I personally used Scatter because it has more scattering options, right? So you have the skeleton that you built, and then you spread this leaf around it, right? So you have one plant like this, one pampas grass or dried up pampas grass sort of plant. Let me just open up that one, and it's over here. So this is the arrangement I made with using that method of spreading with scatter those leaves across some branches. And I have this composition here, or this bouquet, if you will, of pampas grass plants, and I want them to have different colors. And the way to do this is to play with the translucency of the material, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Let me just start Thea and see how it looks. Okay, so now we have the interactive rendering running. Let me just change a few things. I like the environment. I don't like the sky. So if you look closely, you'll see that this plant has two different colors. And the way you do this is, let me just click on the material to show you. I have the basic color, which is a beige from the texture I used, and then in the diffuse panel over here I added a color. Basically this can be any color you want. It can be red, it can be blue, it can be whatever. Let me just change it. like this, right? You can use any color you want to give color to the whole plant, and I used this sort of blue teal color. But the effect I want to have is to look like it was painted, but the paint is coming off a little bit, like it's older, or you know, it's a little bit damaged in a way. So the way I do that is I use the beige color or the beige texture in the translucency. So actually here you don't need a mix of layers, you can just have the main texture. So what this does is wherever the light hits, it becomes more, or you can see more of the beige texture, and wherever there's more shadow, you can see more of the teal color that you put over here. So this is basically the technique I used, and I made three colors: the beige one, an orange one or a burgundy one, and then this blue teal color. I'm just going to show you, even on the little preview material, you can see that where the light hits is more beige, and where the shadow is, it's more blue or teal. So basically you just mix the diffuse with another color, and then the translucency, you leave it at the beige color or the beige original texture, and you get this kind of an effect. Now once you have your three main branches or your three main colors, we just turn these into Thea proxies to use them in the big arrangement. So you go to TheaRender and create external model or proxy. Let me open that up so I can show you. Now this is the arrangement scene where I have my three branches or three colored branches, right? This is the teal, this is the orange or burgundy, and then we have the beige one. And I want to make an arrangement that looks like this, that I can hang from the ceiling. That would be sort of a chandelier made of this plant. So the way to do this, or the way I did it, is to scatter one of the branches over a sphere. So we take a sphere, I'll just scale it a little bit so it has more of a egg shape or something like this. And let me just open scatter. Where is it? The host will be the sphere, and the scattered objects will be one of the plants. Now, for mode, we're gonna go wrap UV. So it's going to go around the sphere, not just projected on the z-axis. Let me just put 10 copies of this. Of course, it's not going to be pointing up. It's going to be pointing on the normals of the sphere. So it's going to be all around this little egg-shaped sphere. So let me just put it back to pointing up, because I want to show you what I want to do. I'm going to tick rotation, so it has random rotation, and scale, so it has a random scale, but also translation, because I don't want the branches to start from the sphere up. I want the sphere to be somewhere over here in the middle, so the branches should go in. And the way to do that is with translation. Right, with translation, the z-axis, the minimum will be -1, and you see they go lower into the sphere. Let me do that again. If it's 0, everything starts from the sphere up. So if I put -1, they're going to be lower. The main ground floor for this, or the zero plane, will be lower than the sphere. And now we can put them pointing towards the normals. Something like that. Let me just hit generate. Now all of these proxies already have the material applied to them, right? We have the teal, the burgundy, and the beige. So we're going to do 3 spheres like this and then put them together next to each other after we delete the spheres. So we just need the sphere for the shape around which the plant will scatter. Let's see how that looks. Right, so we have the teal plant scattered across the sphere, and it looks pretty good. It's very dynamic. This is what we're looking for. That's why I did the translation to -1. So we have this exploding effect in the plant. So you basically do the same thing for each of the plants, and then you put them next to each other and you get this sort of an arrangement, right? I wanted to have the burgundy in the middle, the beige, and then the teal colored plant on the sides. And if I remember correctly, I scaled the burgundy to be a lot bigger. Maybe like that. So you can just play around with these and test them out for yourselves. See what looks better for you. Let me just start again. Oh yeah, this is what I was looking for. So you just need 1 plant, and then you scatter it around, color it, and then put it up on the ceiling over the table. That's basically how I did the pampas grass chandelier. So I just took that arrangement and I put it over the table. Now I want to take a look and show you guys the materials I used in this scene. Now for the floor, I used 2 different textures, but with the same kind of wood on them, these textures. And I built a border around the room, and I put one of the textures like this on the side, so you don't see the next row of wood panels. You just have one going across like that, and another one in the other direction, just on the perimeter of this room. If we take a look at the material, let me bring Thea back here, and I'll just hide the pampas chandelier. Let's start Thea. So this is how the scene looks without the chandelier over the table. And I wanted to talk about the floor material. Whenever I do a wooden floor, I always like to use a reflection map. But in this case, I did something different. So basically, there's the diffuse map, the reflection map, and then a roughness map and a normal. For some reason, I had to push the normal very high because it didn't show up, but I don't know why that is. But this is how it worked for me. Now what I did at the reflectance channel here, I used the reflectance map, but then I mixed it with a Fresnel ramp. The reason I did this is because I wanted to have more reflection if I'm looking at the floor like this from an angle, right? It's a very subtle reflection, but I like these things, so it's very subtle here. Or let me just go lower. You see a little bit of the reflection here. And what this Fresnel ramp does in the reflectance channel is that the more perpendicular I look at the floor, the less reflection that's going to have, if that makes sense. So the higher I am with the camera, I can't see reflections, or I can see very few reflections in the floor. But the lower I come, like this, then there's going to be more reflections. You see them here. So that's how basically the materials work. Everything has Fresnel basically. So I use that here, and it's not very noticeable, but I like it. It makes, in my opinion, it makes a difference. So the floor is with this reflection map, and the walls also have a reflection map and some bump or normals. Now for the curtain, I just used, let me just hit thin translucent. And basically that's it. I didn't do a lot of things to the curtain. The couch material is a velvet material with a reflectance map applied to it. The materials are not that special. I mean, the most special thing here is the pampas grass chandelier. Everything else is pretty basic. Just reflection maps, Fresnel maps for the velvet, right? So here I used, where is it? Again, a mix of colors, some reflection, and I just added on another layer, a diffuse with a Fresnel ramp to have this fall off effect on the sides. Let me see what else. The lighting, basically, for the lighting, let me just move this so you can see. I use the same light planes that I use in my previous tutorial. I just put them here, and of course these are invisible to the camera, to the reflections, and they don't cast any shadows. They produce shadows, but the sun coming from the outside doesn't create shadows. It just goes through them. And with those light planes, we get these cool, very soft shadows on the walls, like this, or like that. You see them here, and here is starting to form. Now for the lighting, let's go to the environment. The sun, I clicked on manual sun, and I want the sun to be really white, so just the color for the sun. Soft shadow multiplier to set to 2, and the physical sky is lighting the rest of the scene. Okay. And this is the main lighting setup that I used. So it's very bright, it has very soft shadows, and I'm actually pretty pleased with it. So it looks good. Now let's just bring in the chandelier. So now that we have all our elements in place, we can play around with the camera settings and the final render settings. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is how I set up my camera lenses. So basically in the scene tab over here, you probably saw that it says 50 millimeters. So it means that I wanted to use a 50 millimeter lens on this scene. Now the way to do this is in SketchUp. So basically I have to mimic a 50 millimeter camera through the field of view in SketchUp. Now if we push Z or Z, you'll see here on the right that it says field of view 26.99 degrees. So basically that's around or close to a full frame 50 millimeter lens. Now if you go to basically any website that has a field of view calculator, I'm going to show you one that I use, which is this one, vanvahonen.info. I'll put this in the description below. But basically, we need to convert the field of view that SketchUp has into millimeter for each of the lenses we want to use. So the way this works, in any calculator you find online, a field of view calculator, you just Google that and you get a lot of cool websites. But this I like because it's very straightforward, it's very simple. You can put more lenses in here. And what we're looking for, so I set up 28 millimeter lenses, 35, 50, and 80, because I usually use 35 or 50 millimeter lenses for interior scenes. So I just put that in here, and then this calculator tells me all kinds of numbers, but the one you want to look for is the vertical angle of view. So this is what we change when we are in SketchUp and we press Z or Z, and then we write down the field of view that we want to have. So if I want a 50 millimeter lens, I need around 27 field of view, 27 degrees. If I want an 80 millimeter lens, that's 1706. So basically I come here and I push Z and then just say 17.06, enter, and this is an 80 millimeter lens, or close to. I don't think it's really exact, but it's close to that look. If we want photorealistic results, we need to use photorealistic methods. And the lens is very important, right? The glass that we use for any photography is very important. So let me just switch it back to 50 mil, and that's 26.99. I can never remember those, so I always look at them. So 26, right? 26.99. And this is the 50 millimeter camera. Now, once we have that, what I want to do is change the exposure from standard to filmic, because it has more depth and I really like the look of it. Right? It looks like you already applied a lookup table to the whole scene. Right? So I use filmic tone mapping, and then usually the ISO is 100, so it's very dark. And the way to brighten your scene is to push this up to 400, for example, as you would with a DSLR camera. And the shutter speed will do the same thing, unless you have motion or video to create some motion blur. This will do the same thing as ISO. So if you bring it down, you'll have a brighter scene. Higher, you'll have a darker scene. So the default, I think, is 250. Now these aren't the final render settings, because for that we have to stop the preview. So for the final render settings, I'll show you what I do. I usually set the resolution around 3500 pixels, and for this particular scene I used a square ratio, so 1:1 ratio, because I think it's going to be posted on Instagram and so on, so they use 1:1 ratio. I think that's it here. Of course, I'm going to click production render and have 1500 samples or pixels. You usually don't need that much, but I do that because I like to come here into the Presto settings and turn off super sampling. Super sampling basically is more samples were needed to bring down the noise, but once I put the pixel limit to 1500, that's enough. So if you have super sampling on, you can leave this at 512. But in my experience, I found out that the render goes faster with no super sampling, higher samples. I wouldn't go above. So I've seen people that use like really high numbers, but that just is overkill. You don't really need so many samples. You can even bring this down to 1000 without super sampling, and then use the optics denoiser to eliminate any noise you might have. I don't really like the look of the optics denoiser, so what I do is blend it with the original like 30%. So 30% of the image will be denoised and the rest will be like the original, because I like to have that little grain, so I don't really like a very perfect looking image, because if I'm looking for a photorealistic result, I need a little bit of grain in the image. So 1500 pixel limit, no super sampling, and optics denoiser 30%. And basically that's it, and you're ready to render your final image. Now this is the final render that I did using this technique. I hope you found this information useful. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.